Hi, Todd Swart here, just getting started on a new painting. As you can see, I've got it set up here in the easel behind me. I've just started blocking it in and drafted in, just really roughly blocked in some of the key shapes. It's a nice little alley scene that I found in Old Town Pasadena, and let me show you what this looks like. Okay, so this scene looks down an alley that opens into kind of a courtyard. So over here on the right we have, this is the edge of a building, and this is all a building, the wall of a building. With some potted plants, and then this also is the wall of a building leading in this way, and so this is an open alleyway, and it opens into that kind of this courtyard with this nice little shaft of light shining down on it, with this girl standing right there. In the background, you can't tell what it is yet, but it's going to be like kind of a brick building with some windows, and it'll all be in shadow. With this painting, I did not start with a detailed drawing. I chose instead to kind of block in the major shapes and the major masses, mostly because this is mostly a dark tone painting. It's a low-key painting, and it just has, you know, this area in the center that's a little bit brighter. So I think we've got a good start so far. I think this is going to be a good painting. Let me show you what the photo looks like. Alright, so this is the reference photo. Sorry, there's kind of a glare up in the top right. As you can see, it is mostly a dark image with just this light tone area where the sun's shining through. I photoshopped this image a bit. There was actually no person in the scene, and I took that image of that girl leaning against the wall from another photo, and just by chance it worked out well that it was a similar lighting situation. I'm still going to have to adjust the lighting on her a little bit, but I think it overall works out pretty well. It also gives the image a clear center of interest. There's a lot going on here. There's a sign up here along this wall. There's some signs there in the background. And like I say, there's that brick building in the back, and there's these planters down here. So I may include or delete a lot of that detail depending on how the painting goes. But I've got a lot of good information in this reference photo, so I can use it or delete it as needed. Okay, so I got this painting mostly blocked in. I think overall it's working pretty well. The only things I really don't like, this back wall is kind of too red. I need to knock that back a little bit, but that's an easy fix. And this awning here doesn't really read. It extends out, and then that is the end of this awning, which from a distance when I step back, it looks really awkward. So I need to fix that. And I'm going to put some signs or something back in here. With this painting, with my last painting, it was all about the center of interest, and it was, the focal point was this kid who was playing air guitar or doing something silly. In this painting, it's kind of the opposite. With this painting, I want to be careful not to draw too much attention to the center of interest. I've got this girl here standing by the wall, and if I'm not careful, your eye is going to be drawn too strongly to her, and I don't want to do that. I want to actually minimize the attraction and minimize the impact of that person, so you're attracted to the rest of the painting. Of course you'll see her and notice her, but I don't want it to be so strong that your eye locks in on her and isn't taken to the rest of the painting. Alright, so I got this piece pretty well blocked in, and I've started to develop a few of the areas. I'm trying to decide now what to do with these three buildings, these big shapes of color back there. They're too open. I need to add something to them. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some windows, and on this white face here, I'm going to have a window cross that this awning. So it's crossed behind the awning, so that'll add a little bit of depth between the awning and that window behind it. On this building here, I think I'm going to put a sign, and again, it might interface with that awning at some point. And then back here, I'm also going to try to add a couple of windows, and also maybe a sign. I think I'm also going to put a sign over on this wall at some point, but I'm going to leave that for later. I'm more concerned with this space, and so I'm going to try out those ideas, see how those windows and signs look. Okay, so I've been doing quite a bit of work on this piece. As you can see, I put in the background here. I put in these arches and these windows, and I was looking at them and I wasn't quite happy with them, and I wasn't quite sure why, and I changed the placement of them a little bit and was fiddling around, and finally I realized that my perspective is way off. So this person standing here on the side, this little dot right there, I don't know if you can see it, but that's my that's the vanishing point for all of my buildings. All the buildings vanish to that point right there. And if I do perspective on this girl, from the top of her head to the vanishing point is like that, and from her feet to the vanishing point is like that. So that means she would shrink down to about that big if she were to walk back and stand underneath that arches. And that means those arches are just enormously huge compared to the size of that person. They're way too big. And the same with those windows. So I'm just going to completely start over, repaint that whole building just as kind of solid brick, and then maybe try to put in some arches and windows, but do it again with the perspective in mind. Okay, so I repainted these archways. I made them a lot smaller and repainted these windows up on the top too, and I think it's working a lot better. The only part that's not painted now, of course, is this girl, and I think I'm going to paint her in next. And from that point, it's going to be a matter of playing around with all the different components of the painting. And like I mentioned before, I want her to be the center of interest, but I also don't want her to be too strong. I don't want your eye to be drawn to her right away. So I want to have more areas of interest all kind of throughout the painting. But to do that, I want to have her painted in and evaluate where what's drawing your attention, what areas need to be subdued, what areas can be accentuated, and kind of view the painting through that lens. So I've been really fighting with this back wall back here. At first I painted in those windows and I thought they looked good, but then I thought they were too detailed and drew a little too much attention. So I painted the whole thing over with really broad brush strokes and trying to make everything real loose. But then I realized I kind of put it in too dark and I didn't like the effect, so I scraped it out. And now I think I'm going to go back, and I like the idea of the real loose broad brush strokes in these windows up here, similar to kind of what you have here, just kind of so it creates a lot of loose edges, and just you can see what it is, but there's not there's just no detail. And I also added, I was having trouble every time I glanced at the painting from a distance. At this, I couldn't really tell what this awning was because it just kind of sticks in from the top of the canvas, and I couldn't really see what it was. So I raised up these bushes here, and so you get a little bit of depth effect so that the bushes go behind that awning. So I think that helps a little bit. Another thing that's kind of bugging me is I don't like this big white space here in this wall. I think I might create some kind of architectural feature that extends across the wall like that. I'm not quite sure. I'm half tempted to put in a window because that would work well, but a window would be dark, and that would create contrast between the girl and that dark window. And I like the fact that she's standing against the white wall and is wearing a white shirt. And again, that's because I don't want to draw too much attention to her. So I've made a lot of changes to the background of this painting. Like I mentioned before, I just wasn't happy with that back wall, and I didn't film all the changes because I just threw something in experimentally to see if it worked, and then I'd add something else and take something out, and I was just kind of testing to see how it looked. And before I knew it, I wound up with some pretty big changes. So let me show you what I got. So as you can see, I threw out this idea of having this wall extend all the way to the top. It's just kind of too big, and I just couldn't make it work. And so I cut that wall in half, and then added this building here, and added this building in the distance with a patch of sky. And I really think that adds a lot more depth to the scene without distracting too much. I added these trees here and these here, so it's got a lot more interesting shapes going on as well. And so then I wound up, I was struggling with this wall, this section of wall, and it was too light, and then I wound up darkening it, and that brought more attention into the center here. Okay, so I think I'm about ready to call this one done. I like the overall effect of this painting. I think it's working pretty well. I like it has a strong sense of light with the shaft of sunlight coming in through the center. It has a clear center of interest in the girl, but also holds your interest in other parts of the painting. And it has a strong sense of depth with these trees, the bushes in the foreground, and everything receding back to to the building and the sky in the background. And even though this painting has been a bit of a struggle, I think it came out pretty well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you'll click that like and subscribe button. Keep an eye out for my next video. It's a beautiful scene I found along the California coast. It's a really nice rocky outcropping with some real beautiful afternoon sunlight. It should be out shortly. Thanks for watching.